I feel confident that most others with me at that time, Topol Rudolph, Bruno Sevi, Barnes, and those later, Cobb and Frazen, and others would agree with me that Harvard was an invaluable education in discipline and in the instilling of principles of the modern movement. Though we studied under the masters, we were not indoctrinated into a modern style, but given the guidelines to investigate an architecture for our time and circumstance. And we, the second generation of moderns, brought about and witnessed in the 50s and 60s what will be recorded as the golden years of high modern. John Johansen. After graduation, Johansen began his career with Skidmore, Owings and Merrill in New York City and was loaned out to work on the United Nations. He then settled into New Canaan, Connecticut, along with Marcel Breuer and Landis Gores, Philip Johnson and Elliot Noyes. Breaking away from classic designs, the five gained international acclaim in the 50s as advocates of the modernist tenet form follows function, while living and working in avant-garde houses they designed. The architecture they created in the early days in New Canaan would later designate them as the Harvard Five. Some drawings. Now the drawings are as they are, but the buildings are more interesting than the drawings. Yet you see here, kind of a so-called visionary urbanism. Something again which is totally discouraged in our country, in the educational system. In urbanism, no one does visionary urbanism, no one, and it's so very sad. Anyway, he worked within what is called form follows function, but he also explored all kinds of things like you see in this sketch, an organic, even a nanotecture or nano architecture. This is a drawing for an embassy he built, and we are going to look at it. A project which would have been inconceivable in the educational system in our country because it's not done with the T-square and the rectangle. This one, though, is early biomorphic design. These remained mainly in models, but it shows a preoccupation with a certain kind of architecture. 1949, immediately after the war, here you can tell the influence of Walter Gropius and Marcel Breuer. They were building similar buildings at that time, very similar actually. But later on, he emancipated himself from the teachings of Gropius and Breuer. This was his first house in 1950, but I don't have pictures. Upside down house in New Canaan. I'm not going to read this text. It's about a house which has the bedrooms on the first floor and the living room at the top. That's why it is called the upside down house. Here it is. I mean, this building looks remarkably contemporary. I mean, I see such buildings every day being published on Arch Daily. This was built 70 years ago. (1955). My own investigations into the box led to Johansen House #1, which we already saw. It was included in the Museum of Modern Arts exhibit built in the US as a work typical of a graduate of Harvard Graduate School of Design. In 1955, I built a second glass box, the McNiff House. In both these houses, it was the subtleties and articulation of the box that interested me over its presumed so-called purity. And just like Breuer, he also used stone And this added something, and you'll see in some other works by Johansen, the organic is more and more present. Destroyed and replaced by this house. So this house was destroyed and replaced by this house. What can you do? It's you know, this happens when a good building is destroyed. Okay, maybe the previous building was not a masterpiece, but this one certainly is not. It's a sweet little mediocre bourgeois house. The Peter and Patricia Dunham House, 1950, again, uh, at that time he was not very original, it's true, but he built I would say a decent modern architecture, if I can call it so. Although I'm aware the word decent is not necessarily a compliment, but I don't know what other word to use. But at that time, these such buildings were almost revolutionary. You know, they, even today they would seem contemporary. At that time, they were revolutionary. 1953, this is not him. This is probably a real estate agent or the client. I mean, the inhabitant of the house, maybe. I read also that he had some Palladian motifs in his architecture. This is not very clear to me, unless we look at this building where there seems to be a symmetry. Maybe oriented in four directions. It's possible. I only see two, but we'll take a look at other buildings. By the way of Palladio, I have to tell you that I attended 5 conferences by Peter Eisenman on Andrea Palladio. Eisenman was obsessed by Andrea Palladio. And this only shows that the so-called deconstructivists were actually very educated and are very educated architects. Even in a classical sense. Eisenman now, he's almost 90, he's 89. He's studying intensely Alberti. Alberti, can you believe it? A deconstructivist studying Leon Battista Alberti. Bravo to him. I think he even published a book on Alberti, being 89. This means passion, you know. When you have passion at 90, yes, you study Alberti. When you don't have passion, you are not interested in Alberti at all, even at 20 or 25 or 30 or 35. The spray house is 2 houses of sprayed concrete of a steel frame structure. House number 1 of the 2 photos, we will see them, was never built. House number 2, second photo, was built in Zagreb, Yugoslavia for the 1956 trade fair. And now you see the other side of John Johansen, who explore biomorphic architecture and so on. Here you can also see again a certain symmetry. Maybe that's why the reference to Palladio, maybe. The bridge house, there are a few interesting bridge houses in the world. This is one of them. already saw that one. Sorry, some of these pictures are not satisfying. The resolution is not great, but we have a review of his work, rather comprehensive. So at the end of the presentation, I think we can articulate a few thoughts about John Johansen. This one is interesting, the Labyrinth House. So destroyed, it was destroyed in 1988 by talk show host Phil Donahue, who was a celebrity, but an idiot, obviously. He destroyed a very good school, a very good building, who owned the house next door at 114 and bought the property for more privacy. The house had been empty for several years and was attracting vagrants, Donahue said. Why didn't someone take care of this building? Where were all those caring people when the building was unoccupied? This building was published in L'Architecture d'Aujourd'hui and other important magazines at the time when it was built, and it was one of the best buildings by John Johansen. And this so-called celebrity demolished it to make more room for his site. It's very sad. This was an excellent building. And I did a bad job. I should have had more images with this building, and I thought I had. The telephone pole house, this one is interesting, but the picture, I think, yeah, I have a few more pictures, but I'm afraid now that I have actually two presentations with John Johansen, and because I remember the Labyrinth House, I had more pictures with it, and it's possible I chose for today the presentation that doesn't have more pictures. We'll see. This one is very interesting, and even if the pictures are not great because they are rather small, but you see the very interesting articulations of structural wood elements that are almost, collaborating, so to speak, like in a Japanese temple. Too bad those electrical wires or whatever they are infecting the wood with the aggressive, but at least they are, I mean, I don't know. I'm ambivalent a little bit. I like oppositions, and I like harmonic through contrast, but here there is a certain level. Well, at least I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have said that there are resemblances to a Japanese temple. In a Japanese temple, you never see something like this, this joining through the aggressiveness of metal or steel. But what can we do? We live in a modern time, so-called modern time, the tube house. This one resembles a lot a house built by Kurokawa in Japan, Kisho Kurokawa, and he built it before Kurokawa. So he had elements of futuristic, he had a futuristic imagination, and whenever he had the occasion, he displayed it. And just before he died, he published a book, Nanotecture, which is, what he imagined the architecture of the world will be in the year 2200. Now, this is an interesting house he built for himself in 1974 for himself and his wife. It was destroyed by fire, and then he rebuilt it in 1975, called the Tent House. It appears massive, but the enclosure is actually not concrete as you might think, but it's actually a kind of a tent material. It's translucent, as you can see here. It's an interesting house and not an expensive house. I like this house, and I think it displays his spirit, you know, democratic, open, adventurous in terms of materials, conception. I mean, it's even its name, tent house, you know, it's, and also it has a level of fragility, which I like, although formally you might say it's like a trunk of a pyramid, but it's not heavy. It's not really a house about permanence. It's rather a house for ephemerality, which I like very much. (1976), another house, less interesting perhaps than the previous one, but it's interesting, the staircase, particularly the handrail. 1979, another house. Now, the furniture, I'm sure, is not the one he proposed. Is, you know, whoever has the house chose the furniture. The floating house unbuilt. 1961, the Franklin D. Roosevelt Memorial, but I don't have pictures. The Francis Smith Elementary School in Columbus. This one is interesting. Here, he is exploring something that I like. Not so much seen in this school, but you'll see later a building which is a paradigmatic building for him. But even here, you see this articulation through bridges, through corridors, exterior corridors that these connect various pavilions, and they are colorful. And but here he's still a little bit timid. He's a little more courageous in a building that is kind of similar to this one. But still, I think it shows an exploration that that time was not very common. Unfortunately, this building is, well, it's an embassy in Ireland, in Dublin. I don't know. It's not one of my preferred buildings by him, but what can you do? It was a governmental building. It's, you know, it is what it is. Rather stiff, in my opinion. I mean, it is circular, and yes, it has that round atrium, which is nice, but all in all, the architecture is rather, I don't know, stiff, as I called it. Memorial Hall. This one is interesting in Indianapolis. This one, Kenneth Frampton loved very much, and I sent him a picture with it, and he didn't know about this building. He was very interested in this building, and I like it too. As at least seen from here, I think is excellent. So you see, John Johansen was not a signature architect. He explored various ways of doing architecture. Ah, so I do have more pictures, and I'm very happy because this is one of his best buildings, the one that was demolished. 1966, the Labyrinth House. Even the presence of the word labyrinth is important. Look at the plan, and he already escaped the trappings of international style architecture, and he's on his own here. And I think it was a very good building. I just don't understand how this building was demolished. Again, this is the very good website made by, I forgot his name, a Romanian architect in Suceava. Janos know his name. I should have memorized his name, but I'm terrible with names. Offhouses.com, and I recommend you, I suggest to you to visit his website because it's very good. And he chooses very well. He chooses the buildings that deserve to be chosen. And this building by Johansen is one of them. Why that so-called celebrity demolished it is beyond me. I mean, even if it was vandalized, or I'm sure they couldn't vandalize too much the concrete walls. This was one of the important houses, private houses built in the 60s. And again, acknowledging the labyrinth is already placing Johansen in a different category, because the labyrinth, it was even called a scandal for the intelligence. The labyrinth is, is in a way advocating unreason, not reason. The Orlando Library, 1966. He built a few large public buildings, and you are going to see them. Not all of them are quite excellent. I mean, this one has something of a certain houses of culture in Romania, Casa Culturii. There are some buildings that, and they were built probably around the same time. This is a library, Orlando, Florida. Now, this theater in Baltimore, I think it was demolished, yes. So sad, some of his best buildings were destroyed. This was a good building. And I remember in the 70s, this was published in important architecture magazines. Yes, it was considered brutalist architecture, but it is dynamic. It was dynamic, and it was demolished. To make room, I don't know for what. Sad, very sad. I like concrete. I like raw concrete, exposed concrete. Too bad it pollutes, but what can we do? The telephone pole house. We saw already a few pictures with it. I hope I have better pictures here. Not really, but I like both its name and its appearance. The school, the building is interesting. Too bad I don't have great pictures. Here he is with the Lebia suits on the left, and on the right is John Johansen. They contributed, I think Lebia suits wrote the foreword to the book Nanotecture. This library, 1969, is also, I think, an interesting building by John Johansen. This one, fortunately, it was not destroyed. Frank Gehry used two words which are oxymoronically associated. He talked about happy insecurity. And this by the way of his tower in Arles. And I think maybe one day we should talk about this, about happy insecurity. I think insecurity is meant in that sense of, you know, the opposite of something that is static, dogmatic, frozen. And in life itself is insecure. And to make something that is happily insecure is perhaps an exciting goal, but it's not easy to do something like this. It's probably easy to do an unhappy insecurity, but a happy insecurity, no, it's not easy. Now, this building also was destroyed and is probably the best known building by John Johansen from 1970, a theater. When you look at it, you wouldn't say it's a theater, but it is. I like this building very much because it is again about democracy. It's about interconnectedness. It is about color. It is about the joy of creativity. It is about the avant-garde, about life as an adventure. It's open. It's open in all senses, and I think we need more buildings with this spirit, not necessarily with these forms, but with this spirit. Unfortunately, even in the United States, it came to be considered, inappropriate or undesirable. Sad. This one we saw. And I think I end my presentation, my imperfect presentation on John Johansen.